Over the last few years, Acura has been redesigning their entire lineup. It all started with the Acura RDX, their smallest crossover in the lineup. Next, we got the TLX. Then, rather unfortunately, the cancellation of their largest sedan, the RLX. And for 2021, we're going to be getting an all-new MDX, their flagship three-row crossover. Saying that it's absolutely essential to get the MDX right is really an understatement because the MDX is one of the best-selling luxury three-row crossovers out there. For 2021, they're not diverting too much from the formula that's made the MDX a success so far. So it's going to be a front-wheel drive or an all-wheel drive three-row crossover that seems to really be focusing on value. Let's dive into the pictures and talk about what we know and, most importantly, what we don't know yet about the MDX. The most important thing that we don't know about the MDX is its price tag, and the second most important thing is that we don't know exactly how big the MDX is for 2021. But as you can see based on the photos that they've released so far, the look is definitely in keeping with the new TLX and, of course, the smaller Acura RDX. It has the diamond-shaped grille up front, some very attractive LED headlights. They've gotten a little bit slimmer and a little bit sleeker for 2021. Although again, we don't have any detailed specifications just yet, the MDX has gotten wider and has a longer wheelbase than it did before. On the other hand, Acura has told us how much longer the wheelbase will be, and it is a 3-inch stretch over the current MDX, which is pretty significant. That's likely going to move the MDX from one of the smaller entries in the luxury three-row crossover segment to likely an entry that's bigger than something along the lines of the XC90. It could be that it's going to be as roomy inside as something along the lines of the Infiniti QX60, which is among the larger three-row luxury crossovers. The wheels on the prototype vehicle pictured are 21-inch wheels, but Acura didn't say whether these are going to be the wheels that we're going to find on the base version of the MDX or the new MDX Type S. Yes, you heard that right, there is going to be a Type S version of the MDX. As expected, Acura has decided to stuff their new 3-liter turbocharged V6 engine from the TLX Type S under the hood of the MDX Type S. But most importantly, it's not getting any additional power. So according to what they've released so far, it'll be rated at 355 horsepower and 354 pound-feet of torque. It's going to be mated to the same 10-speed automatic transmission that we see spreading its way across the Honda and Acura lineup. We also see that in the Honda Accord, the new TLX, and of course the RDX as well. If you've driven any of the recent Acura products with the older ZF 9-speed automatic transmission, don't worry, this 10-speed is an entirely new design. It is considerably smoother. It was in-house developed for Honda and Acura vehicles, and it seems to be the one that they're going to be using going forward in all of their newest vehicles. I have to admit, I was a little bit surprised that Acura decided to call the MDX Type S the Type S. Now, on the prototype pictures that they've sent us, I don't know exactly whether this is the Type S or the non-Type S. It looks like it might be the sportier version of the MDX, but we'll have to wait until a little bit later to really find out exactly what the external differences are between the Type S and the non-Type S. But the reason I was a little surprised is that the Type S MDX is going to be kind of a different performing vehicle in its segment than the TLX Type S. The TLX Type S has the power and the curb weight to compete with entries like the Audi S4, perhaps entry-level AMG trims from Mercedes, but 355 horsepower in an MDX-sized vehicle doesn't seem to be quite that same level of performance. It is unlikely that this MDX is going to be as quick, for instance, as the Volvo XC90 T8 with the plug-in hybrid system, 475 pound-feet of torque and 400 horsepower. It also probably is not going to be as quick as some of those BMW and Mercedes three-row vehicles that have their turbocharged 6-cylinder engines under the hood. On the other hand, the MDX is going to be getting the 4th generation Acura super handling all-wheel drive system, the same all-wheel drive setup that we see in the TLX. What makes this system unique is that it can send more power to the rear axle mechanically than a Volvo XC90 or a Lexus RX or something like the Infiniti QX60, and it has a torque vectoring rear axle, which again, we don't see in the Volvo, the Lexus, or the Infiniti. That means that depending on exactly what you're doing with the MDX, at times it will feel a little bit more like a BMW X5, perhaps a little bit more like a GLE than some of the other front-wheel drive-based crossovers. But it's never going to feel quite like a rear-wheel drive X5 if you can get your hands on one, of course. There were a ton of rumors out there swirling that the base engine in the new MDX would end up being a variant of the 2-liter turbo that we find in the RDX and the TLX, but that ends up not being the case. Instead, Acura decided to revise the 3.5-liter V6 engine, or at least we assume it's going to be a revised version because in this document, all they say is 3.5-liter naturally aspirated V6 for the base model. It's probably going to get a slight horsepower bump over the current MDX, but the big news is that it's going to be mated to the factory 10-speed automatic transmission, the same one that we're going to find in the TLX, the RDX, and of course the Type S. If you're looking for a hybrid MDX, you might want to pick up one of the current generation while supplies last because Acura made no mention of a hybrid drivetrain, at least yet, in this generation of the MDX. Moving back to the outside, you'll certainly notice that we have a longer hood proportion in the MDX than we find in the current model, but we don't find quite as long of a dash-to-axle ratio as we find in the TLX, so I suspect that this is going to be a bit more space efficient than the TLX. That's definitely a good thing because the TLX on the outside is BMW 5 Series sized, but on the inside it's more BMW 3 Series sized. So I was really concerned that the new MDX would end up getting really large on the outside, but not really any bigger on the inside. That doesn't appear to be the case. Most likely the wheelbase stretch has gone to legroom on the inside, although again, Acura has not given us any specific details, but it is possible that at least some of that wheelbase increase could have gone to giving it this stretched proportion. Now let's dive on into the interior, because this is definitely an area where Acura has made some significant improvements in the TLX and in the RDX. And you'll notice that the style of the interior looks very much like those other two products, but when we take a closer look at the dashboard, it really looks like there's greater attention to detail here and better materials than we find in either the TLX or the RDX, which surprises me a little since the TLX is now going to be the flagship sedan in the lineup. You can see that we have a stitched dashboard, or at least what looks like a stitched dashboard, stitched lower sections of the dash as well. I am a little bit concerned about some of the details going on here, like the transition between the A-pillar and the stitched portion of the dashboard. It appears to be a hard plastic like we see in the TLX, but we'll have to wait until I can get my hands on one for a complete review, of course. It looks like we have a very similar attractive steering wheel to what we find in the TLX, but big difference behind the steering wheel is that we get a full LCD instrument cluster, which we don't currently see in the smaller Acuras. As you'd expect out of a crossover in the MDX's likely price range, we're going to be getting a ton of luxury touches inside. For instance, we're going to be getting open-pore wood trim with infused metallic flakes, they say, polished aluminum and soft-touch Milano leather all the way around. There's also going to be French stitching detail and next-generation Acura sport seats with a more curved form. But what I was more interested in is that we're going to be getting a new Acura seat design that's going to feature a 16-way power adjustment and integrated massage. This is going to be the first Acura product with integrated massage. Now at this point, I don't know exactly what the massage is going to be like, whether it's going to be a little bit more similar to BMW's anti-fatigue seats, which they also sometimes call a massaging seat. We also see that similar seat design in the new Genesis GV80, for instance, or whether it's going to be a more aggressive massage like we see in Volvo and Mercedes alternatives in this segment. Unfortunately, Acura hasn't provided that kind of information. However, we do know that we're going to be getting a lot of ambient lighting touches here, 27 different lighting schemes. No modern Acura would be complete without an ELS sound system and a ton of speakers, so we're going to get 25 speakers in here, 1,000 watts of power, and 22 discrete audio channels. On the downside, everything appears to be controlled via Acura's touchpad infotainment system. This is the same sort of trackpad-like controller that we find in the TLX and in the RDX. Now, it's infinitely better and easier to use than the one that we see in modern Lexus models, but I still wish Acura gave us a touchscreen interface for this particular system. Now, we are going to be getting a larger screen, 12.3 inches in the MDX, making it larger than the one in the TLX or in the RDX, but it appears that we aren't going to be getting a touchscreen functionality there yet. We're going to be getting just the touchpad in the center console. For those that are counting, that does put the MDX at LCD real estate parity with the more expensive options in this segment, like the Mercedes-Benz GLE with its two large LCDs right there in the dash. Taking a look backwards in the cabin, you'll notice two things. We have a very large panoramic moonroof available, and the third row is a 2-passenger third row. I'd kind of hope that Acura would give us an 8-passenger MDX because we really don't find many 8-passenger luxury vehicles out there, but instead it looks like we're going to be getting at least a 7-passenger MDX, possibly a 6-passenger version at some point later. But the one that we're taking a look at right here does have a 3-person bench there in the middle. If you want to get your hands on the new MDX, Acura says it's going to go on sale in early 2021, and if you want to get the Type S, you'll have to wait a little bit longer. That's going to be on sale in summer of 2021, so probably about 6 months after we start seeing the base versions on dealer lots. At this point in time, I don't know how much the MDX is going to cost, but going out on a limb here, I'm going to say it's probably going to be more expensive than the current version. The TLX really surprised everybody by being considerably more expensive than the outgoing base TLX. Now, admittedly, we do get more features and more power in the base TLX now than we did before. However, it did get notably more expensive. And I wouldn't be too surprised if this MDX ended up being a few $1,000s more expensive than the current version. Again, if you want a hybrid, you might want to act quickly because the current version's hybrid model is still available on dealer lots, but we don't have any idea when a hybrid MDX might return in this generation. I'm, however, pretty stoked to drive it because the new double wishbone front suspension has really made a big difference in terms of handling in the new TLX. I expect a lot of that is going to translate over here to the MDX, which is also going to be getting a very similar suspension setup. And likely, as we see in the TLX, that's probably going to make the MDX more fun to drive than any of the other transverse engined options in the luxury luxury segment. The RX, the XC90, and of course the QX60 as well. Hopefully I'll be able to get my hands on the new MDX over the next few months. In the meantime, be sure and hit that subscribe button down there at the bottom of your screen. I'm really excited to see how the MDX drives, because with the combination of Acura's new double wishbone front suspension design, harkens back to Acuras that we've seen in the past, and of course Acura's super handling all-wheel drive system, I suspect that the MDX is certainly going to be more fun than the Infiniti, the Lexus, and the Volvo competition. We'll have to see exactly how much fun the MDX is in Type S form and whether it really has the chops to compete with some of the S, the AMG, or bottom line M Performance trims that we find in the BMW lineup, but the super handling all-wheel drive system certainly has an advantage over most of its direct competitors. And of course, the MDX is probably still going to be an incredible value versus the Germans. Be sure and let me know what you think about all that down there in the comment section below, and of course, stay tuned because hopefully I'll be able to get my hands on one of these over the next few months. I'll see all of you later. And in the meantime, if you want new merch, I have new merch. You can head over to aoamerch.com. Hopefully there's a link at some point in these videos. And we only have one design on a multiple of different shirts at the moment, but designs are going to be expanding between now and Christmas, hopefully this year. We have about 6 or 7 designs coming up, and I'll see all of you later.